Hello. All right. I just want to make everybody aware we are waiting for the TV outside to be presenting the live stream before we commence the presentation tonight, so that everyone has the opportunity to be present and hear and see what's going on. So if everyone could just bear with us for a few minutes. Thank you. Testing, testing, testing for the live stream, testing. All right, if I could have everyone's attention, we are going to get started. Thank you. All right. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. Before I get started, I want to make 2 points. The first point, we want to thank the Pacific Senior Center for allowing us to use their venue this evening, and we want to remind everybody to be respectful of their venue. If you become unruly or unrowdy and are interrupting our speakers, you will be asked to leave, and there will be zero leeway, so please do not do that. Secondly, I would like to introduce and make note that there are 5 aldermen here with us this evening. Carlos Stewart, James Cleve, Tyler Hoven, and Debbie Kelly are present. So they are here and they are listening. So thank you for that. Tonight is not a protest. It is not a rally. It is a structured conversation about facts. You're going to hear from independent experts in groundwater, in wastewater, in land use law. You will hear that aquifer capacity can be tested and modeled. You will hear that total water demand can be measured. You will hear that zoning decisions must follow Missouri law. And you will see what is not included in the PUD that has been presented. You may also hear that the PUD is just the beginning of a negotiation, and the details can be worked out later. And that may be true. But zoning approval is not the beginning of leverage. It is the point where leverage shifts. So tonight is not about stopping negotiation. It is about whether clear, measurable commitments should exist before zoning is granted, not after. Approval should follow defined answers, not precede them. That is what tonight is about. Before we move into technical and legal details, we want to start with something more foundational. who we are as a community, and how we move forward together. Our first speaker tonight is Kelsey Eversmeyer. Kelsey is a community health expert and health science researcher who studies how decisions and environments affect communities over time. She's also the product of Pacific and someone who deeply loves this community. Tonight, she's here to speak not about policy or technical details, but about coming together and how we can move forward as neighbors, even when we may not all agree. Kelsey.
Thank you, Sam. Heard we're not allowed to get rowdy, but for those of you that don't know me, I am an Eversmeyer, so bear with me. Oh, if you need me to be loud, I can speak up. So I wanted to come here today and really support the efforts that are going on and what the Roots Coalition is doing. I really like their approach to evidence-based information. You heard a little bit about my background, but I have to say the reason I'm here today is because of this community. It was sandbagging houses with my dad during a flood. I'm going to try not to get emotional. I love this community because Ms. Hartman, who led, shout out, Ms. Hartman, who led the Health Occ program, put me in health sciences, and that took my career in a place that I didn't know it could, took me into research about rural communities and the people that I love, and how we're affected by the policy decisions, by codes, by ordinances, by things that, you know, maybe my parents' generation and my generation aren't as involved in as older generations have been. I think we've gotten in a dangerous place of expecting our community decisions to be automated. So with that being said, I know a lot of people want to stay neutral, and we have a really great conversation tonight about data and about, you know, what is and isn't allowed in terms of building something and letting it run in our community. But first, we do need to have a conversation about our relationship to one another. I am a part of organizing efforts through the city, working with Montgomery County on their efforts as well. And I want you guys to know that Pacific is on people's mouths, and our name is in people's mouths, for good reasons and for bad. We're being used as an example. There's a lot of people that love this community that don't even live here. I myself have moved out. I live in you know, the big bad city right now. But I love this community with a burning passion. And I have to say, part of me being brought up here today, Allison and Sam wanted me to share something that I shared with them, which is that it breaks my heart to hear that multi-generational friendships are being broken up over this stuff. We can sit here all day and try to act neutral, but every single one of us are involved in this decision. And these impacts from my research alone, which I'm happy to share with anyone who wants it, not just affects Pacific, but it is going to affect people outside of Pacific. And something that we have to consider is that our residents are already under immense financial stress. Immense. I hear that from one-on-one conversations, and so that's the health aspect of it all, but we cannot get to what is good for our community until we start talking to one another. We cannot make this about Bill. We cannot make this about Heather. We cannot make this about the committee, any committee. This is about us as a community. And a divided community is incredibly dangerous. We're talking about farmland that's already been divested from corporate agriculture and everything else. Like, rural communities are a target for these companies. And this is not your Meta, your Microsoft, your whatever. These are smaller companies that are taking advantage of these rural areas because they know they can. And so, like Sam had said, I'll try not to get too rowdy about this, keep my personal opinions out of it, but it's not inevitable. What is happening is not inevitable. We are Americans, we are Pacificans, nothing goes unless we say so. And so if something's not beneficial to our community, we can only make that decision if we get down to the nitty-gritty of it. But we cannot get there if we are unwilling to hear each other and if we keep having unproductive conversations and yelling matches. So if we can all be open tonight, we're all going to hear things that contradict what we've heard or believed. We're all going to have a lot more questions than we came in with if we're being good stewards of our information. So I just wanted to say there are people who have grown up here. There are people who have not grown up here that don't even live here that love you guys. Love you guys immensely. And I'm one of them. And I want to see us do our due diligence because right now we have leverage. We have leverage to slow this down and do it correctly. We do not need to barrel through a decision on this. So take the urgency off the conversation, support one another, and let's come up with a solution that works.
Thank you very much, Kelsey. We appreciate that subtle reminder that we're all a community in this together. With that foundation of community in mind, we'll now begin looking at the infrastructure questions that any project of this scale raises. Our first technical speaker tonight is Natalie Stahl. Natalie has been a licensed Missouri water and wastewater operator since 2000. She's held a Level A wastewater certification since 2013, the highest level in the state. She has worked at the Weldon Springs site, served 12 years as a laboratory director for a local sewer district, and managed a landfill pre-treatment wastewater facility. Since 2017, she has operated her own wastewater services business, and in 2023 opened a wastewater analysis laboratory serving local municipalities. Tonight, she is here to speak about wastewater capacity and the operational realities that must be considered when evaluating a project of this scale. Natalie?
All right, can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. All right, so just to touch on what was said prior, I am not originally from here. I'm originally from Illinois, but I love this place. I've been here over 20 years, and I wouldn't change it, and I would never go back. So this is coming from my heart, too, because this is in my backyard. We're going to talk about the wastewater reuse. This is what Beltline has brought to the table. They want to use our treatment facility that's being upgraded, and they want to utilize that water coming out of it. So they're stating that they need this upgraded treatment facility. The planned upgrades that have already been put in place for the city's facility, they aren't the type of upgrades that the data center needs for cooling. These centers require advanced treatment, and the city has a lagoon that they are still continuing to use. The lagoons are considered secondary treatment, so advanced treatment is what's needed. Currently, the current upgrade plan, I should say, that's being put into place, it's already been into place from what I've heard. It's supposed to be starting. Pacific's going to continue using that current lagoon, and they're going to continue using some of their original equipment for the current upgrade. And this is not going to meet that criteria because the water needs to be so much cleaner than what that can produce just on its own. Even with Beltline making a statement regarding a new technology, I've heard that in one of their I think it was that Tuesday special meeting. We don't know what that is, and that can't happen the way the facility sits right now. And for the $12 million upgrade that's been planned for the city, that's coming off of numbers at the meeting minutes from January 27th. It was a $12 million upgrade. That's not enough to get where they need it to be as clean as they need it to be, especially for how much water they need it to be. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about some ammonia levels. I'm going to give you some information about ammonia. Ammonia is the breakdown of organic matter, like your urine and your waste. That's where it comes from. It's detrimental because high levels can cause fish kills. They can cause algae blooms, things of that nature. It can be very, very negative to the resources that they're dumping into. Average levels at treatment facilities, if you have the advanced treatment, you're looking at numbers that can be less than 0.5 milligrams per liter. Regular facilities that are all over our countryside, out here, these small communities, small neighborhoods, they're looking at numbers, they can go up to 5 milligrams per liter permitted. Usually they're below that, just because they're mechanical plants, they reach a better number. Lagoons do not reach those low numbers without assistance. It just depends on what the receiving stream that the wastewater is going to that gives you your number on how limited you are with your ammonia. So currently, according to those minutes, January 27th, currently the city is utilizing artificial bacteria to maintain their ammonia limits under 1 milligram per liter. So without that bacteria addition, the average ammonia levels that I've been able to find are around 7. The new permit that I can only find online, that I don't know if we're running off of this old permit yet, there's not enough information out there for me to get to. They allow a daily maximum of 31 milligrams per liter. That's a lot. Now, their average monthly is 7.1, but 31's a lot. And there is no way that something like that's going to get the cooling towers what they need. So, according to the city minutes, the city has requested their engineer that they submit an application for EPA variance. And that just means that the city cannot meet the permit criteria as the plant operates, and fixing it is technically or economically impossible. So right now it sits Pacific's permit that I'm understanding from online resources, it expired September of 2022. That means they're still running off of that permit because I couldn't find any kind of other additional information. So that means that we've got, they can get a 7.1 monthly average or 31 daily max is what, and they can't achieve that right now. They've got to go for a variance. That's going to be huge on the advanced treatment end of things. There's going to be a lot of money that has to go into this facility. It's not just put in a couple blowers and call it a day. So we'll go to our next slide. Some wastewater facility information. Will the planned upgrades work? We've established this. In my professional opinion, I say no. They are not, because they're going to continue their secondary treatment. The data center is going to require advanced treatment. Who is responsible if something goes wrong with this? This is a question for the city folks, because the city's still going to hold the permit unless there's no emergency bypass going to the river. There's still going to be water that's available to go to the river. That's going to be the city. Something goes wrong, they're coming after you. They're not going after the data center. They're coming after you guys. Will the ammonia levels be fixed with the upgrades? Current ammonia issues can be remedied with the planned upgrades, but the cooling water is going to require a much higher quality water standard than what has been planned. So that's where that one is standing. It's going to take a lot more than what the city was already planning to do to get the numbers that they need to get. Next slide, please. So some other considerations. Nobody's brought up silica yet. After a little bit of digging, and being in this field that I'm in, I find find things that I start going into wormholes on. Silica can form silicate deposits, particularly in boiler systems or heated loops. So if this purple pipe system is a continuous loop that goes from the data center to the treatment plant, back to the data center, that's going to be warm water coming through there. And it is the removal is particularly difficult in that. So that's something they need to think about, because we literally have a silica plant in town. And I can almost guarantee you nobody has tested that wastewater coming out of that lagoon for silica yet. Almost guarantee you. I would love to see those results if they did, but I can tell you they're probably going to do it now, because that's something that needs to be checked. Also, phosphorus. Phosphorus is another one along the lines with ammonia. It's going to be an issue. After the water gets used in that cooling tower, it's going to come back to the treatment plant with phosphorus levels higher than what they're expected. And that's just another added upgrade that's going to happen with this thing. So I know Beltline wants to pay for it all, but I don't think you all are understanding how big of a project this is going to be. Next slide, please. So here's our water deficit page. This gives you some real, like, eyeball-looking statistics. We're going to start with 1 million gallons a day. That's what our treatment plant produces. 1.01 is the average million gallons per day. The data center is going to need upwards of 2. So no matter what, we're starting off with a 2-to-1 ratio. And it doesn't matter if we have 5 1 million gallon tanks on hold for when this thing starts up, we're always going to run out of water. And that's my biggest question is where is this water going to come from? They're not going to let them drill new wells. Is it going to come from the public water supply? Well, I have a really big problem with that because my back door looks at the tower by the BP station in Catawissa. And if they go 1,200 feet in the ground like they're allowed to do according to the state, my well's going to go dry, my house is going to become inhabitable, and somebody's going to have a real problem. It's not going to be me. It's going to be whoever's in charge of that. And I'm probably going to be talking to our lawyer about it, and so will everyone else on my side of the street. Where's that water going to go? And just imagine this. It's not on my slide. 1 million gallons a day, or 1 million gallons, I should say. 1 million gallons is about 694 gallons per minute. So if you put 700 gallons of milk on the ground, it's gone within a minute. And you have to replace that in the next minute and replace it in the next minute. That's 1 million gallons a day. That's got to be happening. So, yeah, that's a lot of water. And I think that's all I got for you guys. Just where's it gonna come from? And I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me up here.
Thank you, Natalie. Wastewater is one part of the equation. Groundwater supply is another. To help us understand what scientific work is required to evaluate aquifer capacity, our next speaker is John Bognar. John is a registered geologist in Missouri and a certified professional geologist with more than 45 years of experience in groundwater and subsurface evaluation. He has worked on water supply development, aquifer protection, permitting, and environmental compliance throughout his career. He also served as national president of the American Institute of Professional Geologists and as a chairman of the Missouri Board of Geologist Registration. Tonight, he's here to explain what scientific work is required to determine whether an aquifer can support additional demand and how those questions are properly answered. John?
Thank you very much for the introduction. If you can go to my introductive slide there, I'd appreciate it. So, Natalie, there was so many questions that you raised, and it seemed to be because just not a lot of information is available. And as I was looking at the situation, it's my understanding that people were wishing everybody to think that groundwater would not be used. And so I tried to wrap my head around that, and I thought maybe the best place to look was in the planned unit development. Would you go to the next slide, please? And the planned unit development, that's about the only place where I saw anything written. And under section 7.3, water, there's one paragraph about water, one. And the first 4 sentences of that paragraph are potentially about groundwater. I'm not real sure. So I have some uncertainties that I want to share that I think can be eventually answered, but they exist right now. And I put myself into the position of someone having to make a decision, one of the stakeholders. And I say, can I make that decision without the information? And that's for them to decide, but it would be very difficult without information in my thoughts. So some of those uncertainties are, if you go to the next slide, please. They talk about in the PUD, they do write we need 20,000 gallons per day potable water. And that water is, the uncertainty is where is that going to come from? So it's just simply not stated. Next slide, please. Another uncertainty is what do they mean by potable water? As I read the document itself, I think that there are some slang terms that are being used. And what we need to do, I think any stakeholder would want these things to be absolutely defined. So potable water typically is water that is safe for human consumption. So that's just simply an uncertainty. Do they really do they understand that? Does the Aldermanic Board understand that as well? Next slide, please. I found this to be very interesting. Potable water supply is not contemplated for cooling needs. So that's a quote out of that sentence, and that sentence can mean it's not expected or we haven't thought about it, and I wonder if they're really trying to say that potable water shall not be used to cool. But the issue is kind of danced around with that subject. So as a scientist, I like to have very precise language, and I think the stakeholders deserve that very precise language as well. Next slide, please. Even this one here, private well, that needs to be defined. When you're permitting a well, water well, there are many, many different types of wells. Again, let's go with that which is written for us in Missouri statutes and laws. There's definitions. So let's not confuse things by saying private wells shall not be utilized. What are you talking about specifically? Is this a non-transient community well? Is it a community non-transient well? Is it a public water supply, et cetera, et cetera? So please identify those things. Again, that's going to help the stakeholders and the Aldermanic Board understand exactly what's being discussed in that little old paragraph 7.3. If you go to the next slide, please. They actually make a statement that additional water supply in the future. It looks to me like they're anticipating additional water supply. So again, a major uncertainty. Nobody's talked much about that. And so the question becomes, what are you talking about there? For what use, and what is the contingency that you might need additional water? If you go to the next slide, please. And here's, this is my last uncertainty that I want to speak about in that one paragraph, in the first 4 sentences, is what does current supply mean? Now, to a hydrogeologist, that could mean the entire aquifer. Or it could mean, in the case, because they reference the city of Pacific in that sentence, it could mean just their infrastructure in the Pacific water supply, in their water supply infrastructure. So that needs to be defined too. So there's a lot of wiggle room for the way it's written, and technical people, engineers, scientists would have, all of them being reasonable, would have several different opinions as to about what exactly do you mean in those first 4 sentences of 7.3, okay? So I want to switch gears now a little bit, and I know that folks have a lot of questions about their water supply, and this is what I'm going to open up the technical part here with this statement here. Your questions about wells. Thank you. I just wanted to check. Your questions about wells and the aquifer capability, they are answerable. They are answerable, and with great certainty. And however, you have to do the proper scientific effort in order to answer those questions, okay? And so if it becomes necessary, Natalie alluded to, hey, we're missing 1 million gallons a day already. Where's that water going to come from? Not only that, let's say that somehow that the cooling system the closed-loop system would work? Would they not want a backup system? That's an Achilles heel. If that fails, the whole system goes down, just like electricity is Achilles heel. And if that fails, they will turn on their water generators. So I suspect that there's going to have to be some sort of a backup system for cooling water. And the only thing that I can see right now that makes most sense is groundwater if it would work, okay? So let's ask these 5 questions. All stakeholders should be asking these 5 questions. Number 1, would you go to the next set, please? So what is the total project water demand? And we need great details. This is the current situation. Industrial use, maintenance, potable supply, public safety, fire, irrigation, ecological, cooling, et cetera. All of those things need to be quantified so that scientists can investigate the aquifer and the water systems to see if it's feasible. The next slide, please. And very important here is let's account for the future. If we're going to be taxing or burdening an aquifer, we understand that people building data centers are hoping to convince communities by letting them know what great growth it's going to have. We're going to have more restaurants, we're going to have more residents, we're going to have more employees, we're going to have more of everything, and that's going to take water, and it's going to take water supply. So let's go ahead and predict. I think all stakeholders should have an understanding of that future need as well as the current that a data center may pose on the system. Next question, next page, please. Thank you. So these are some of the more you have to drill down into that water demand question, and you have to ask the question, in order to do a scientific evaluation, is this project 5 years? Are we going to need this water for 5 years? How about 50 years? What's that going to do? There's going to be a cumulative effect on the aquifer and the systems. What's the total water demand on an annual basis? What is the maximum rate? So they may say we need 100 million gallons per year, but do we need that 100 million gallons in 1 month? Or can it be spread out over the life or on an annual basis, okay? So what's the, and how often will we be needing those things? So very specific, well thought out water demands are required for people to understand, for scientists to study the aquifer and the existing infrastructure system. Could you go to the next slide, please? And so question number 3, where's it going to come from? That's one of the obvious questions. Are we going to use the existing infrastructure? Are we going to use private water supply wells, even though there's a statement that none would be? Will there be new wells needed? Combination of existing and new. Go to the next slide, please. Question set 4A. So the first thing you need to do to begin answering that is you have to inspect and analyze the existing water systems that might be a part of that equation for use. The Pacific Water System, Franklin County Public Water Supply District number 3, and other nearby community systems. So those things have to be well understood. How well do they operate? What's their capabilities, et cetera. And then to the next slide. This is the big question, so I'm going to take time to read it. Is the combination of aquifer and groundwater producing infrastructure capability sufficient to meet the project's added water supply demand, current and future, without interference to other groundwater users? That's our big question, folks. And that question is answerable. It's answerable. And if you go to the next slide, I'll start talking about how does one quantify those answers. And that is by a process called aquifer characterization. And that answers the question, is the aquifer capable? If you go to the next slide, please. The attorney that's going to be speaking after me always tells me, John, when I ask you to tell me what time it is, when I ask you what time it is, don't tell me how to build a watch. So I had like several more slides, but I'm just going to give these 6 steps because I could talk for 2 hours on what the aquifer characterization process is and the great detail involved. But I wanted you to know that I'm complying with Steve over here. Yeah. So those steps are, number 1, determine the aquifer type. Is it confined or unconfined? I know those are technical terms, but it's very important for everybody to understand what sort of an aquifer do we have for us to be able to begin to quantify its behavior. Identify and delineate. So are we talking about 1 square mile? Are we talking about 10 square miles? I'm not sure right now. We don't know because we don't know what the demand on the aquifer would be. So that's an iterative process. If you get a little bit of information about how much water they're really going to need, then you can start giving a gross sense for how big of an area do we need to study. Step number 3 is to build that hydrogeologic conceptual model. That's where you actually start drawing out, what do the layers of the aquifer look like? Where do they exist in 2 dimensions? How deep is it, et cetera? Build that hydrogeologic model. And then once you have that, you go to step 4, and that's where you physically test the aquifer by pumping. You stress the aquifer by pumping water from it and making observations at other locations. And that gives us aquifer characteristics such as, you may eventually see these terms, transmissivity, storativity, porosity, permeability, and what sort of safe yields can we get. Those are technical terms, but those are the terms that we plug in to the next step, which is to create, if you go to the next, are we there? Oh yeah, please go to, oh no, we're on that sheet, sorry. Create a numerical model of groundwater flow. That's what we want to do. Now, people have been modeling groundwater flow for many, many decades. The USGS has one called ModFlow that would work perfectly here, but there's lots of different ones available. But you plug in your aquifer characteristics information, and you say, you begin asking the model questions. What happens if I put a well in this particular location and I draw 1,300 gallons per minute from it? How far out will that impact be, and what will that impact be? And you can ask it all sorts of questions. If I pump that well, will it dry up a spring, for instance? Now, in this case, I don't know that there's any springs nearby, but I'm just throwing out just letting you know that these things are very sophisticated and they perform very, very well. And they often are used in court demonstrations to show the folks making the legal decisions how the aquifers would behave. So that's what you want to do with step 6 is create those scenarios. When the city of Pacific itself might say, okay, if they need more water, let's on the model, let's double the amount of water we're taking out of well number 2 and see what happens. Does it work? I don't know, but that model will help to answer those questions. If you go to the next slide, please. You can't see it. You cannot see it. I'll be doggone. That is a scorecard for the 6 steps. I'll just summarize it with one word. Have those 6 steps been done? To my knowledge, the answer is no. So I put myself in the decision maker's shoes, and I say, if I don't know the answer to this information, I cannot answer all of those questions about what will it do to my water? What will it do to the aquifer? What about my personal well? What about the public well system? I can't answer those questions. Next slide, please. And all of that talking, I want you folks to take this one point away. Your questions about aquifer capability and well interference are answerable with a high level of scientific certainty if you do the work. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We've now heard about infrastructure and scientific evaluation. The final piece is process. How zoning decisions are legally made and what requirements must be followed. Our final speaker tonight is Steve Jeffrey. Steve is the owner of Jeffrey Law Group, in Chesterfield, Missouri, and has more than 39 years of experience in environmental law and regulatory matters. He previously served as general counsel for the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, where he oversaw legal review of policy, enforcement, and regulatory issues. He has argued cases before the Missouri Supreme Court and all 3 Missouri Courts of Appeal. Tonight, he's here to walk through the legal process for rezoning, how a PUD functions, and what procedural requirements must be followed under Missouri law. Steve?
Can everyone hear me? Before I start, I want to apologize. Everyone's been to the eye doctor. I had an eye doctor appointment this afternoon. They dilated my eyes. All I'm seeing, every one of these lights is a giant starburst. So if I'm talking to the wall, you know why I can't see, okay? First of all, thank you for the kind introduction. Thank everyone for taking time out of your evening to come out here. These are very important issues for my clients, and apparently they are for you too, or you wouldn't be here. What I want to do is, if we can start my slides. Go to the next one. I want to talk about 3 points, okay? General, just an overview of what the procedures are, what the state law, what are some of the municipal code requirements for, doing the rezoning, annexation, those types of issues. Secondly, a review of the planned unit development, the PUD that has been provided to the city as part of this package. And then finally, talk about the Missouri Sunshine Law. So go to the next slide. But before you get into this, just in interest of transparency, I just want to let everyone know that 6 weeks ago, I didn't know anything about data centers either, but I now represent a group out of Montgomery County called Preserve Montgomery County, LLC. They've been experienced similar issues, but their project was further along. There was the county was going to issue $35 billion in revenue bonds, so Amazon could build a giant data center on 1,000 acres in Montgomery County. Anyway, the group on Monday filed an 11-count, 35-page lawsuit against the county commissioners and the state of Missouri. And since right now the lawsuit's only 4 days old, the county was only served yesterday. It's based on my experience, that case in the data center, it's going to be tied up in court for a couple years. Also, I do want to point out that I have known John for decades. I have worked with him. He has served as an expert witness in several litigation matters that I have done, and he knows his stuff, okay? So let's go to the next slide. We'll just run through these pretty quick. A municipality like the city exercises whatever power the General Assembly in Jeff City gives to it. And in Chapter 89 is the set of Missouri statutes which confers power to cities to do things. For example, Section 89.050 gives municipal legislative bodies, in this case like a city council or a board of aldermen, depending upon what type of city it is, the power to determine the manner in which zoning regulations can be established and amended. And that's a quote out of a court case that was decided a few years ago. Next slide. Section 8950 goes on to require that a city has to give at least 15 days notice of the time and place of hearing and publish notice in official papers of general circulation whenever they want to make a decision about something or hold a hearing about something. That's really what the public notice requirement is. Next slide. Section 89.060 extends the notice requirements of the previous section, so it also applies to amendments to any type of zoning ordinances. So anything involving a zoning ordinance, an amendment to a zoning ordinance is all subject to those two statutes. Next slide. Enactment of a zoning ordinance or the amendment of an existing ordinance must strictly comply with those statutory requirements. So what that means, strictly requires, that means every I has to be dotted, every T has to be crossed. If something isn't done properly, it's subject to a challenge. Next slide. Section 89.070 provides that the Board of Aldermen can appoint a Planning and Zoning Commission. Next slide. And also under 09 or 070, a Planning and Zoning Commission, quote, shall make a preliminary report and hold public hearings thereon before submitting its final report to, in this case, a Board of Aldermen, which means whatever a Planning and Zoning Commission does is only a recommendation, and it goes for a final decision to the City Council or the Board of Aldermen in this case. Next slide. Go back one. You're moving the wrong way here. That you were right there. Right. You need to go backwards. Keep going. Okay, go one more forward. Okay. 070 also says the board shall not hold its public hearings or take action until it has received the final report from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Now go to the next slide, 41. This is an excerpt from the City of Pacific's Municipal Code. It's section 405.090. If you recall, John just explained by his review of all of the documentation which he's looked at, all the questions that he has and the type of information that should be provided, the type of studies that should be done. What this section does, it says for any, and this is a quote, for any submittal requiring city approval of an application for a rezoning, conditional use permit, development plan, or site plan, the board, planning commission, or any other entity or official may require an applicant to submit any technical studies the city deems necessary to enable properly evaluate the application. Go to the next slide. And this section continues, and this is a quote out of the city ordinance. Examples of technical studies that may be required shall include, but not be limited to, traffic studies, engineering studies, geologic or hydrogeologic studies, the exact kind of information that John was talking about, flood studies, environmental impact assessments, noise studies, data centers are supposedly very loud, and surface water management drainage studies. So, and the person or firms preparing the studies has to be approved by the city engineer. And the cost of all studies has to be borne by the applicant. So the city clearly has the authority to compel someone that, hey, if you want to apply to do this particular planned unit development, which is we're going to talk about in the next couple of minutes, you need to supply us all this technical information that's unknown right now. We can't make a decision in a vacuum because, again, getting back to the case against Montgomery County, a couple of the counts in that lawsuit involved the commission there making decisions without having sufficient environmental and hydrologic and water usage information. So decisions that are not based upon sufficient data can be challenged as being what's called arbitrary, capricious, unreasonable. That's the applicable legal standard. And the Montgomery County people are holding their county officials to task for not complying with those standards. Go to the next slide, please. So let's talk about the planned unit development. This is the document that John had looked at, and maybe raise your hand if you've seen the planned unit development document. Okay, some of you all have, that's fine. Go ahead to the next slide. This is the cover page of it. City Pacific, planned unit development, PUD number, blah, blah, blah. Go to the next slide. This is a excerpt from the planned unit development. And it says, the concept for this PUD is to change the existing base zoning to a base zoning that will permit the development of data center, further defined as a facility or facilities used to house and which are operated, computer systems, associated components, infrastructure, telecommunications, storage, cooling systems, power supplies, yada, yada, yada. And it goes on to all these technical stuff. So that's the concept that's being presented in the PUD. We go to the next slide. This is also cut and paste from the planned unit development. And it says the relationship between the proposed use of the parcel and all the above adjoining land uses is compatible. The proposed use of this property is in harmony with the surrounding zoning. So they're saying the proposed use is compatible with everything that's around it. But then in section 5, it says the property is currently an operating cattle farm. So if anyone could explain to me how an operating cattle farm, if you could go back one slide, go back a slide, please. You're going the wrong way again. How is an operating cattle farm compatible with electrical substations, battery energy storage systems, backup generation systems, internet-related equipment, data communications? If anyone can explain that to me, John will buy you a Coke at McDonald's afterwards. Next slide, please. Back one. That has a touchy button on that computer back there. You're on slide 46. Let's go to slide 47. And again, another cut and paste out of the plan. The City of Pacific land use plan does not include this property. The latest City Pacific comprehensive plan does call for new clean industrial enterprises, so on and so forth. The important takeaway here is data centers and electrical substations and all that technical stuff that's listed in that long paragraph is not part of the city's comprehensive plan. So years ago, when the city fathers got together and developed and decided, you know, this is how we want our city to grow. This is based upon the character, background, the history of our town, and this is what we think is consistent with that, okay? That's how comprehensive plans are developed. As an aside, I grew up down the road down in Rolla, Missouri, and I remember when I was a kid, you know, there's always a big brouhaha when the first time a big box retailer comes into town. There's always a divide. People like, yeah, it's a good idea. No, it's not a good idea. It is a good idea because of all of the money and tax revenue it's going to bring in, all the employment it's going to bring in. But I don't know how many you all have ever been down to Rolla and you drive down Pine Street downtown. That's where downtown Rolla used to be. There used to be Chub and Joe's restaurant at the hotel, all kinds of department stores, clothing shops, blah, blah, blah. You know what's there now? Nothing. It's all empty. So, again, it's a balancing act.
Hey, can I ask you a question? They haven't even annexed this property yet. The city hasn't annexed the property, right?
That's my understanding. Are we holding off for questions?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Let's go to the next slide, please. Now, this isn't, because I read through the PUD. You know, I'm sure some of you have seen it, but maybe not everybody read it in great detail. Unfortunately, in my business, I have to read stuff in detail, okay? That's why I had to go to the eye doctor today. But what happens if the planned unit development and the data center are approved, but in the future, something happens? and either the city code changes in a way that adversely affects the data center. Say, this is all approved, it goes in 10, 15, 20, 25 years from now, they decide to pull out, or something happens, something, bad happens, what happens if, in that situation? Let's go to the next slide. Section 8 in the plan unit development provides that if there is ever a future conflict between the city municipal code and the PUD, the provisions of the PUD shall prevail and be controlling. That this is the gotcha that's in that document, okay? And the reason it's a gotcha because right now, by everyone's groaning, it obviously, doesn't pass the smell test. But more importantly, go to the next slide. Or this is the language. This is the language. Such special use and development regulations of this PUD shall prevail and be controlling. So that's a section where that came from. I don't want people to think, oh, Steve's up here just making stuff up. I'm not doing that. Next slide. The reason that's a problem is because it's illegal. This is another quote from that one court case we've been looking at. Quote, because the city had no authority to contract away future enforcement of its zoning ordinance, the agreement exceeded the scope of the city's powers in violation of section 432.070 and is void. Okay, next slide. Significantly, as John read through the water section, I think it was like 7.2, 7.3, he had a lot of questions about things that he didn't see. Well, I had I think 3 or 4 points that I didn't see in here. These are items that are not addressed in the PUD document. Go ahead. There's no restriction in there on future groundwater use. It says, well, we want to get our water supply for cooling water right now. We want to do it this way, but there's nothing in there that says, we're never going to change our mind and want to start drilling wells and draw down the city's aquifer. That restriction is not in there. Next slide. There's no guarantee that the data center operator at some point is ever going to come back and seek some type of future tax abatement, because my understanding, tax abatement is not on the table at this point, or at least that's what's publicly available information, that there's no tax abatement has been discussed. Third, there's really no enforcement mechanism. What happens if the provisions of the PUD are violated or not complied with? Violation's a stronger term, but what happens if something happens? It's, the people can't comply with it. Well, it doesn't say. Next slide. And there's no financial guarantees provided to anyone in case the whole deal goes south or the facility goes belly up at some point in time in the future, or for business reasons pulls out, and this giant facility is left there empty. What happens? There's no financial guarantees in there. Next slide. Last thing I want to talk about briefly is the Missouri Sunshine Law. Raise your hand if you've heard of the Missouri Sunshine Law before. Okay, a lot of people have heard about that. That's good. Maybe some of y'all have submitted sunshine requests to get information before, and hopefully you were able to get that in a timely manner. Next slide. Oh, that's a nice one. Is there any reason that has a question mark there?
There was too much technology differences, apparently.
See, this is a sign. No technology. Now, Allison, I know you're a great person, but how possibly can someone who went to the eye doctor and has dilated eyes read that?
I forgot. It's just the.
Okay,
NDA.
all right, I'm fine. I'll wing this.
I
I'll wing
promise
this.
everyone's seen this in this room.
All right, I'll wing it. What we're talking about is non-disclosure agreements. It's my understanding, and I've seen copies of a few non-disclosure agreements involving this particular situation. There were also some non-disclosure agreements in the Montgomery County situation. Those are also subject of one of the specific counts in the lawsuit, why those NDAs are illegal. Are any of these slides loading at all?
It's just the picture from them.
Okay. In these NDAs, there's a definition of what's called confidential information, and it's, quote, either party's proprietary information of a business or technical nature, including business plans, financial information, marketing, sales information, things like that, things associated with a business. Next slide. Such confidential information can contain drawings and designs, prints, sheets, that type of information. Next slide, please. This is also a provision out of the NDAs, Article 2, prohibited use and disclosure. Quote, each party shall treat as confidential and shall not directly or indirectly disclose or use the other party's confidential information except in pursuit of the objective or as directed in writing by the disclosing party, unquote. That's pretty specific that, hey, if you sign this NDA, you're not supposed to talk about whatever it is you're not supposed to talk about, okay? Next slide. The Missouri Sunshine Law in section 610.021, this is the statute that provides authority from the legislature to political subdivisions and state agencies to close records. In other words, under the Sunshine Law, each and every public record of any kind is open to the public, except for whatever is listed in these 29 subsections in this particular statute. For example, the very first subsection, although it's not listed, deals with litigation matters. If a political subdivision is involved in a lawsuit, you don't have to disclose, communications with your attorney to anybody. That's a legitimate closed record. Or subsection 12 deals with city personnel issues, like if you have an employee that needs to be terminated, some stuff like that. Obviously, that should not be public information. But the thing is, of all those reasons listed in the Sunshine Law, section 021, doesn't include NDAs. So by signing an NDA, so let me rephrase that. It would not be a violation of the Sunshine Law to sign an NDA, but if information is withheld from the public on the basis of a non-disclosure agreement, that would be non-compliant with the Open Records Law. And that is also a separate count in the lawsuit involving Montgomery County, the 11-count, 35-page lawsuit. And significantly, the local ambulance district was one of the parties or entities that signed an NDA, but in reviewing their NDA, they knew what I'm talking about because they inserted an extra paragraph in theirs. And what this extra paragraph says, supremacy of the Missouri Sunshine Law. All parties agree that the Merrimack Ambulance District is a political subdivision under the laws of the state of Missouri and is therefore subject to the requirements of the Missouri Sunshine Law. Notwithstanding any other article or paragraph of this agreement, nothing herein shall restrict, prohibit, or delay the ambulance district from complying with the requirements of the Sunshine Law. So, although they signed an NDA, they clearly recognize that, hey, there's no authority for us to prevent, people from asking for copies of documents and information. Next slide, please. So that's all I have in case, are we going to go to questions now or I'll turn it back over? Thank you a lot. You were a very attentive audience. I can see everyone clearly. The two gentlemen with the Army hats, thank you for your service. And
we're going to turn it over to questions basically right now. Did I turn it off? No. I'm good. Thank you, Steve. With the technical and legal framework laid out, we'll now open the floor for questions. So if you can see, there's a microphone over here to my left side. If you would like to ask a question to our lawyer, to John, to Natalie, please step up to the microphone. Please pose your question directly into the microphone so that our live stream audience can hear that question, and they will do their best to answer questions. So just form a line over there. I would ask you to remain respectful, to remain concise as possible, and we thank you for your questions.
My question is for...
Yeah.
Son, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. My question is for Steve. Steve, if the data center would be using the water district water and the water treatment plant, would that insulate them from being able to be sued if anything would happen in those two regards? So like if too much water was being used or the wastewater treatment plant was overrun by the data center, would that give them legal shield to be sued? Thank you.
That's an interesting subject. I don't think I can provide any type of specific answer for that. The reason being that if, say, you have a business A has to consume water, so they have to get the water from someplace, so they're going to have a contract with whoever's providing them the water. So whatever the terms of that contract provide to address your issue is what's going to answer the question. So without seeing a contract, I really can't give you an answer. So possibly the contract could give them some kind of a shield. Possibly the contract could be completely silent on that. It's really, it's just, I'm not trying to, not answer your question, but it's just not enough information to do so at this point.
Okay, my name's James Boyle, and my question's kind of a two-parter. Something that they only briefly touched on in the PUD was the BESS, the Battery Energy Storage System. I want to know exactly how much lithium-ion battery storage is going on that site, because down in Fredericktown, Missouri, about 6 months ago, there was a fire at a battery recycling center. I think people up to 7 miles away actually had to be either sheltering in place or evacuated, so I'd be curious about, is there any kind of plan like that in place for this proposal? And then as a follow-up to that, how are they planning on putting out a potential lithium-ion battery fire? To my knowledge, they have to put that out with something called AFFF, aqueous film forming foam, and that's just pure PFAS. So is there a way to keep that from going into the water supply? Or is that going to go into the river? Are there holding tanks? So I'm curious about that.
I think those are examples of the types of questions that could be presented to the developer under the authority of, what was it, Ordinance 405 point, I forgot the subsection number, but the one that gives the authority to the board or the P&Z Commission to ask, for additional information, technical information, reports, investigations, all of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello, my question is for John and Natalie, one of you two. Right now, currently, the outlet of the wastewater treatment plant, does that become surface water?
Yeah.
So instead of going to the river?
Well, okay, is the river considered surface water?
Yes.
Okay, so then the outlet of the wastewater treatment plant becomes surface water, right?
Yes.
Okay, and surface water is what replenishes your aquifers, right?
It certainly can, yes.
Okay, so then stealing your outlet from your wastewater treatment plant is still stealing from your aquifers. So how is that solving any difference from stealing from your true potable water treatment plant outlet?
That's a great question, because I've asked that question myself. What's going to happen to the aquifer, because we depend on that water, even though it's gone through a process, we still depend on that to replenish what we've used. So
Exactly.
that's
So
it's
if
never
that's
going to
not
go back.
replenishing because
Yeah.
they're using it,
Yeah,
then
it's never going to go back.
you're drying up your aquifer.
And-
No difference. It's just moving the problem.
Exactly. And if you think about it, with cooling towers, there's evaporation, but I don't know what the evaporation rate is versus
The blowdown.
what's being put back.
All that is losses.
Yeah, it's gone.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Hi, I'm Nora Cardinelli. I have a question for John. You were talking about your models and how precise they can be about their ability to meet the demand. But is there a wild card in there with droughts?
Well, those models include recharge to the aquifer. And so, yes, you could ask the model, take away 50% of the natural precipitation that the recharge area receives that eventually goes to the aquifer. Take that away for 3 years. And now tell me what the situation looks like under all these other scenarios. You can keep your pumping wells going on the model. You can shut them down. The city's going to say no car washing, so we'll shut our water wells down 30%. You can make all of those adjustments to the model and see what the answer is to the model. So yes, they're highly adaptive. Highly specific as you want to be.
So as a follow-up then, are droughts becoming more plentiful?
Well, records are only kept, really good records in this country, even in Europe, go back less than 200 years, good records. So statistically speaking, when you're talking about long-term climate trends, I don't believe that there's enough valid statistically significant information to answer that question. Are we trending into droughts or not? But they come and go, and that's all we can expect. Some are short duration, some are very, very severe, some not so. It's just a real tough question to answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Chris. I have two questions. How many people here have wells?
Wow.
Thank you. I had a question regarding the NDA that the city had signed. Is there a potential lawsuit that Beltline can go after the city on? Thank you.
I don't represent Beltline, so I don't feel comfortable speaking on behalf of Beltline.
I just asked if there was a possibility. If they breached the NDA, could they sue the city?
If hypothetically, the company had an unlawful if a hypothetical company had a hypothetical NDA with a hypothetical political subdivision, and the hypothetical alderman of that hypothetical political subdivision disclosed information in compliance with the state's open records law, in the event that the hypothetical company were to bring a hypothetical lawsuit against a hypothetical political subdivision, it would quickly get tossed out of court.
Okay. I'm just making sure.
Based on my experience.
The city can't be blackmailed regarding the NDA, is that correct?
Well, again, you're tossing out these technical terms. I don't know what you mean by blackmail. I'm not trying to dodge your question, but.
Thank you very much. That was
it. My question is for John. I've been doing a lot of research, and I'm not a geologist, but I've been doing digging. Anyhow, I've learned about the freshwater saline transition zone, which I had no idea that exists. I spoke down in Festus, and that runs right through Festus. And anyhow, it's a problem. So in 2020, Eureka voted, I think 64% of the population voted to stop their wells. They had 3 wells, and to build a pipeline to the Missouri River. And because their water was brackish, salt water, Their appliances were getting ruined. And from what I understand, there was increased radium levels. And I believe that pipeline was finished in 2023. In 2024, the wells were off, and they're not on groundwater because it's not drinkable. So that's 5 miles away. So if we start pumping a lot of water here, my understanding that we could, salt intrusion, and you know, it goes through Joplin, and St. Louis City is not potable. And so all of this sucking water out of the ground, especially in Warrenton and Montgomery County and all this, doesn't this cause a big problem?
Yeah, I think I have a sense for where you're going with your question. There is a saltwater or a very saline. There's a distinct line between water that is has low mineralization, somewhere under 1,000 parts per million is where you want to be, but you want to be in the 300s to 200s in reality. There's a well-known geologic phenomenon that occurs in the state of Missouri, and that is there's a saltwater versus freshwater interface, and that line is mapped and runs from Oklahoma up toward the western part of the state, up above Columbia, up above Montgomery County, and it wraps back around. You mentioned the city of St. Louis is salty. And the line cuts right through Festus, as you had mentioned. Yeah, that's a distinct known entity. I personally would not have a fear about that particular geologic condition, okay, that major one. And I'm not familiar with that, what you spoke in the city of Eureka, but I do know that in some places there are some rock formations that come and go. They are present over here, but they may not be present here, and those formations add to the mineralization. So I'm guessing that if indeed they had high mineralization in Eureka, which is well within that saltwater boundary of which I outlined for you, that was probably a very localized condition, okay? And so again, to answer that question, would pumping here cause an impact to Eureka? There's some people that would say that they could answer that question in a general way, that it's so far away, probably not. But we don't know until we study it. We don't know how much water this thing is going to need. We don't know that. We don't know what kind of backup we're going to need. Again, it's knowable, but you've got to have that basic information to know.
Thank you.
See what I say about building the watch?
Don't ask me what time it is.
He knows his stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, I live only 50 feet from where this proposed data center will be. I can see Bill's house from my house. And I have a well. And my concern is if it dries up our wells, who's going to pay if there's another aquifer further deep, down maybe 1,000 feet? Who would pay for us to go to a deeper aquifer? Would I have to pay for it because of a situation that the data center created?
Yeah, I think that's I think that's probably a legal question, but I will tell you that I do know of one well drilled in the area in 1913. It was for a petroleum company came in to find out how much sediment we have in the area, and there's over 2,000 foot thick stratigraphic section right in this area. So in other words, there are units below your well. What's the depth roughly?
Well, I have two wells.
Yeah.
The one for my home is at 506 feet.
Yeah.
The one that it's kind of funny. I drilled a second well just in case the grid goes down. Let's say we had World War III or something and we have no power. So I drilled one and it's a hand pump.
Yeah, okay.
And I have it out by the road so that if anybody needs water, they can just get water from our community.
Yeah.
And so my neighbor said, how much did that cost? I said, $14,000. He goes, you did that for us? I said, yeah. And that's only down 400 feet. So what if we went down 1,000 feet?
Yeah, to answer your question, we know what rocks exist below the elevation of your well. That's well documented, or that's not a pun, but it is well documented. You're getting water at 500 feet from a formation called the Ruby Dew Sandstone, which is one of the better producing parts of the aquifer here. And there are, as you go deeper and deeper, there are other units that will produce plenty of water for just if it's an isolated situation, your well went dry. Okay. Now, if there's somebody impacting the aquifer all around you and drawing that down very, very significantly, you're going to have to drill deeper than how far down that cone of depression is. In other words, the impact that they would have on the aquifer if they drew it down 300 feet more, you're going to have to get a well that's 300 foot deeper. Who's going to pay for it? I think that's a legal issue. Steve, do you want to opine on that?
Unless this project were to proceed ahead and there was a requirement put into the planned unit development regulations or ordinance by the city requiring the data center to pay for any wells like that, unless there's a provision like that, it's going to be on your dime.
How's that fair to us?
May not be.
Thanks, everybody, for great information and everything you shared. My question right now, currently, the subject property isn't part of Pacific jurisdiction, correct? It's not even annexed yet.
That's my understanding.
Okay, so first, before the PUD could even be looked at and planning and zoning, the city first has to annex this property and then have jurisdiction over planning and zoning, and if it can do it, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so let's play this out. Let's say that doesn't happen. Say the city votes it down. Then where does this go? It goes to Franklin County, correct? So the data center people will say, okay, didn't get it through Pacific, the Board of Aldermen voted it down, now let's take our PUD and let's put it in Franklin County and let them approve the data center. Would that be a logical next step?
That certainly could be a business decision made by the developer.
Okay, so the first step for the city is they have to annex this property.
They would have to annex it, rezone it, then approve a PUD.
Okay, and if they don't do that...
And then issue building permits and all that.
And if they don't do that, then Beltline, if I'm on the opposition, if I'm playing devil's advocate on their side, then I would take my PUD and then try to get it approved through Franklin County.
That's certainly a possibility.
Okay, so the battle here is not just with Pacific fighting this as a community, it's our community and the Franklin County residents, because I'm not in Pacific, I'm in Franklin County. I'm a Pacific resident zip code, but my property's in the county right on the front line.
Just to address your point about fighting the battle, this isn't a battle that's only you guys are fighting. It's a battle that people all over the state of Missouri are fighting. People in Kansas City are fighting it. People in Montgomery County are fighting it. People in Warrenton are fighting it. People in Forestell are fighting it. I got calls from 2 other people today. Hey, would you take our case? Well, I don't know. I'm getting kind of busy with this stuff.
So it's city
and there's some people from Festus too.
Right. All right. Thank you.
There's safety in numbers. Reach out to, people who are in the same boat with you. That would be my recommendation.
Also, I will just, sorry to interrupt. I am working on state level actions across the state, so if anyone is interested in more information on that, feel free to reach out.
In the presentation that was made a few weeks ago with regards to water, Beltline stated that it wasn't in their current plan to pull water from the Merrimack River. So aside from groundwater issues, what would your take be on if they had if ultimately they decided that they were going to start sucking water out of the Merrimack? And then I have a follow-up question for
There's no there's no affirmative statement in the current version of the PUD that says we're not going to do that, which tells me they want to leave that option open to them.
And if they started to pull, if their plan was to pull water, what regulations would come in that they would have to surmount in order to?
They'd have to engage the DNR, the EPA, and the Army Corps of Engineers to do that.
Because it's regulated waterway.
It's a quote navigable waterway unquote under the Federal Clean Water Act.
A follow-up question for Mr. Jeffries on the annexation. The only thing, if the city of Pacific was to approve the annexation of the McLaren property and the Alt Farm, which I think is the other piece of the puzzle, the only thing that would connect the city of Pacific to that annexed property is going to be pipelines for the water that's going back and forth between the center.
Let's let him finish the question.
Well, my point is, between Pacific proper and the McLaren farm, the only thing that would connect that property would be the Alt Farm, which they have to do, and is the pipelines that would run between Pacific and the McLaren property.
You're referring just to infrastructure.
Correct.
The pipelines.
Correct.
That's my understanding.
And in the annexation laws, this might be a stretch, but it says there will be no islands. But in effect, that's what they would be creating, because there are no city roads going to the property. There's no infrastructure between the city of Pacific and the McLaren farm. It's all either Jefferson County or Franklin County once you get across the Merrimack River Bridge, I believe. So is there an issue there with annexation and creating an island?
It's certainly an issue to be looked at.
Okay, thank you.
That was my question. I wanted to kind of piggyback on what he said, because if they have to go through private property to build the infrastructure, would they have to take that and force us through eminent domain?
When people say they and them, could you be more specific, please?
I mean, Beltline and Pacific. If they want to get to McLaren's property, they have to go through other people's property. Say they wanted to build the road or whatever, and that's private property. Can Pacific or Beltline force us to give them an easement?
Well, the city always has the power, certainly of eminent domain, if they needed to, to exercise it for some public purpose.
Okay, and then if they are going to use Merrimack River water, what, we need to put in the PUD, there needs, we have permanent year-round eagles on this part of the Merrimack. In Pacific, Eureka, and Gray Summit, there's permanent eagles nest. And they're not an endangered species, but they are a protected species. And this the noise from the substations alone, the vibrations, will affect the eagles. And we have worked, the people of Pacific, Eureka, Gray Summit, we have cleaned up this river. It used to be a cesspool. We used to put cars and appliances to hold the banks. Everything is cleaned up now. We've got otters, and I had 2 eagles yesterday fly over my house, and I moved out here to protect that. And I pray to God that the city of Pacific does the right thing. Thanks.
Excuse me, again, just to follow up on her point, I think that, the eagles and cultural resources, it's my understanding there's also an old cemetery located somewhere around there. Those are all legitimate reasons why the city and the Planning and Zoning Commission should use their power under the one ordinance that we looked at to have the developer investigate all of these things, which has not occurred at this point, and it's not addressed in the PUD. But go ahead.
You mentioned the cemetery. I am very well of that cemetery because my dad used to mushroom hunt on that property, and I know exactly where it is, and it is on Phelan's property. And so that is one thing that really definitely needs to be protected, because those headstones go back to the 1800s. There used to be an old log Catholic church back there, and those were original settlers here. And so I would like to have that protected, because that is history of the families that have lived here before us. And I'm sure there are still some descendants still living here in our area. But I'm glad she brought that up, because that really wasn't what I thought about. But I am very concerned too about the well, because I am on well water, and this project will be, my property line goes within 30 feet of this thing, and I am very concerned about my own well being either polluted or dried up. And I think that Beltline, if our wells go dry, they should pay the cost of drilling a new well for us. I mean, we're not the ones who asked them to come here. And so, and another issue I have is, what happens if a tornado strike comes through? I mean, with the storms we had last year, I had damage to my roof, I had damage to my windows, my screens. What if a tornado comes through and hits this thing? Or what about the New Madrid fault line? I mean, we are capable of feeling an earthquake. I mean, I used to live in Baldwin. I felt a tremors, and it was from the New Madrid fault line. And I'm concerned about earthquakes, tornadoes. My well's going dry. And so I would like to know, are they going to do any studies about that, about the New Madrid fault line and tornadoes?
I'll take your second half first, the New Madrid fault. There are studies that show if we had, quote unquote, a similar movement that we had in 1811, which, by the way, rang church bells in New England and woke up President Thomas Jefferson. He felt the earthquake in Missouri, and those mornings. Some studies indicate that, for instance, in the city of St. Louis, in some areas prone to liquefaction or earth shaking, if you will, you may see some bricks fall off some of the older buildings, chimneys perhaps fall, that sort of thing. It all depends on where these things are built, and part of building infrastructure like that these days requires seismic analysis. So that would be part of an engineering design that I would certainly expect to see if I were a regulatory body or a government body wanting to build something like that. I would want to know if they've investigated that. So, and as far as your water well goes, again, the point that I wanted to present here this evening is, we don't know what they want to do. We don't know what their water demand is. We don't know if it's going to include groundwater. We know none of those things. So the big point is, there's a vacuum of information that will not allow me to answer your question at this moment.
I think that's something Beltline needs to answer and provide for us. Or not just Beltline, because they will tell us anything, but I mean, I want someone to actually say, definitely, no, it will not affect your well will not go dry, and it will not poison it.
Well, I also presented tonight that those questions are answerable with great certainty.
Okay.
But you have to do the work.
All right.
The work has to be done.
Okay. Well, and to my tornado question, I mean, I want to know what's going to be the environmental impact on that, because they do put out toxins and they do put out contaminated water. And so these are all questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, I would agree. Anybody that's approving plans are going to have to look at the housekeeping plans for, supposedly if they have backup generators, they're going to have a lot of diesel fuel on site. They're going to have maintenance trucks. They're going to have all sorts of things that uses chemicals. And those things, modern day facilities, there's all sorts of rules and requirements to manage those types of things. But if I'm the person writing a permit for that, or if I'm the person making this happen in a legal sense, as a governing body, I want to see all those things in advance to make sure they know what they're talking about.
Well, and with my research, what I've read about articles is that with the toxins going out into the air, that's a big environmental and health risk to all of us living near and around it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura. I just wanted everybody to know that I used AI to get this information. My name is Laura, and I just wanted everyone to know that 40% of all the data centers have thwarted the data centers, and it's all with sustained local opposition. So with that said, we can do this. We can make this happen. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was I did a little research on Beltline. Beltline is a company that comes in and builds. They were a renewable energy developer that had expanded into large-scale, specialized, or built-to-suit data centers with a focus on AI centers. They build massive hyperscale, which I think is what is going on here. And the one in Oklahoma is 400 acres. I think this one is going to be 600 acres. The thing that worried me the most was that they are a build-to-suit economic development project. Beltline acts as a developer that handles the initial site selection regarding rezoning and negotiations, often aimed at attracting major unnamed technology companies, hyperscalers. They are AI-focused facilities and infrastructure adjacent sites. So there could be something coming next to it. The other thing is just the bottom line is Beltline is a non-operator. It's not a long-term operator. So I'm sure you all knew that. I didn't. I hated that I had to use AI, but it happened. So the next thing is the environment. With what's happening now, I noticed that in Missouri, we no longer have to do car emissions. We are also in Missouri they have stopped doing any kind of EPA water testing. Government is not doing that anymore. HOAs are now doing their own water testing. And so with that said, I'm looking into the future of this present presidential administration, the changes that are coming on. This push on AI is a directive directly from President Trump to get things to be moved in a fast-paced way that takes small communities like us out, and here we are. So we are also having to look at the cost of hiring attorneys to make sure that we can combat what is coming down the line. And I wanted to ask you, as a community, to raise funds. I'm sure our municipal insurance, our municipal budget fund, which is, I'm not sure how Pacific works it, but I'd like to know how we are paying you to help us stop this possible eventuality. And I want to know if the City of Pacific has allocated something for the public to make sure that you are cared for properly in representing us as a community, to hear our needs and to stop this. The last question I have is, I didn't realize that Crooked Creek was happening. I was focused hearing data center from the Arboretum. They are postponed till July.
March 17th.
So that means the possibility of 2 data centers within a really close proximity. How are we going to collect? What is your advice to us as a community? I know that you've just started understanding AI and data centers recently. This is unprecedented, and no one really knows. But there are communities that are and have, St. Charles, collectively getting together and stopping the destruction of our air, water, and soil. Thank you.
So Lori, I just want to tap on the one thing, the water testing. So we're regulated by the state of Missouri to test our water and wastewater. So if, say your neighborhood has a community well that they get their water from, they are still regulated by the state to do their testing every month and whatever their requirements are.
In light of the changes that are rapidly happening within our government, state, federal, and local, I'm worried that those adherences to environmental protections are going to be continuously getting kicked to provide the best possible environment for something that is adverse to our lives.
I see. So we're upheld to the Clean Water Act.
Which is getting attacked.
And that's hopefully our state takes hold of its own self, because right now we're in charge of ourselves. We do go to EPA as a higher up, but they also can form their own.
But they're getting gutted.
Hopefully we can all do this again if it starts happening, because I haven't seen anything locally.
I went to the EPA site and it was gut punch.
I'll keep an eye out, because I see some of that stuff as it comes down the pike before it comes out to public on some of the groups that I'm on. So I'll definitely keep tabs on it. And
well, I'd like to. I'm really impressed with all of you, and thank you. And
are you a part of have you become a member of the Roots Coalition, like on the Facebook page and that?
Yes, I just got on Facebook.
So
because
I will
of this.
keep that on my stuff. That way, if I see something like that come down the pipe, I'll let you guys know.
Right on. Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. My question is with regards, like, for the Board of Aldermen and everyone here, is with electricity usage, because that wasn't touched upon tonight. But Missouri right now, our total energy producing sources from my research is about 67,000 megawatts. But we use, in the state of Missouri, 77,000 megawatts of energy per year. So we're already energy dependent on other states. And now we're building these data centers. Like, how is our local community and just Missouri at large going to be able to support our energy needs? Because right now, like, we're not even doing that as status quo. So I think that's a good question to ponder for the Board of Aldermen. Like, how is this going to produce energy? And are they going to be on backup generators? I know they keep saying it's going to be solar powered, but we are kind of, not a lot of sunshine for a lot of the year. So how is that even going to be feasible? That's like my concern and my question as well. And I don't feel like that was touched upon, and there wasn't anything I saw tonight. Maybe that's like a different meeting, but that's just kind of my concern. I don't know if anyone can answer that question with the energy usage.
I think the answer to your question, I would suggest that you reach out to your state senator or your state representative. Those issues are being debated in Jeff City.
Okay, so I have reached out.
Those are really statewide issues, so.
Yeah, I have reached out to my state senator and Missouri representative, but they just acted like this was a local issue and they didn't really seem interested in helping me. But I do want to broadcast something, because someone else was telling me about it, but there's a bill in Missouri called HB 2239. It's presented by Marty Murray. He's in St. Louis, and it's called the AI Data Center Accountability Act. What we need to do is that it would put a law in place that right now we don't have any law in place to hold data centers accountable, and there needs to be a law in place to hold data centers accountable, because right now they can do whatever they want. But it's in the beginning stages, so someone has like some suggestions or stuff they want to put in the bill. It's the beginning stages, but I've called Brad Banderman and Ben Brown. We need a co-sponsor for this bill to pass in the Missouri House, and it basically sets limits on electricity usage, like water usage. It makes them produce yearly environmental reports. I think it needs to go a little bit further, like who's going to clean up this mess when these data centers are obsolete in 5 to 10 years. But that should also be in Missouri state law. But basically reach out to your representative, Brad Banderman, or wherever you're at, or if you know someone in another area, reach out, because right now this bill needs to be co-sponsored. And if these data centers go up in like Warrenton, Missouri, even though it's not in our neck of the woods, that's still going to affect our health. That's that's going to affect the water in this area. So there needs to be something in place to hold everyone accountable and just for the safety and health of our community. So there needs to be a law in place. So again, that bill is HB 2239, and reach out to your representative about getting this bill passed, and anyone you know that lives in another area to also co-sponsor and pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
This question is, my name is Corbett. This question is for Mr. Jeffrey. Is there a mechanism that would currently exist under civil suit, under civil law in the state of Missouri for a thing called anticipatory nuisance?
Yes.
Meaning that any landowner within a certain radius, and I've heard a lot of words used for this development, but I'm going to use the word what it is. It's a monstrosity that the City of Pacific, the alderman, the mayor, Beltline Energy, Mr. McLaren, Franklin County Board of Commissioners, anyone that says my property value, the quality of my life, water, air, anything is going to be adversely affected by this, you're not just going to do this, we're going to see you in court, class action lawsuit. Is that a possibility, to just gum up the works enough to put up enough of a fight where they say, you know what, we're going to go somewhere else? That the landowners in this area, the people that live here are going to say, you're not doing this right in my backyard, and we just go, well, we can't stop it. What's the remedy for that?
Under the law, the definition of a private nuisance is when someone makes does something unreasonable on their property that causes harm to someone else. That's the definition of a nuisance. For example, if a giant chemical company moves in across the road from someone and pumps out pollution and all that, that could be a nuisance. Or a slaughterhouse moving in across the street from someone, that could be a nuisance, okay? Generally, a nuisance lawsuit is brought after the harm has already occurred, okay? After the offensive action has already taken place or is taking place. But in some jurisdictions, and there's really not very much Missouri law on this concept of what's called an anticipatory nuisance. That is, if you know that this landowner is going to do something on their property that's going to unreasonably cause harm to me over here, I don't have to wait until it's built and it's actually harming me. I can bring an anticipatory nuisance to try to stop it before it's built. That's the definition of an anticipatory nuisance.
Is that something that should be explored in this instance? I would certainly think so, wouldn't you?
Well, what individual people want to pursue is up to them. I can't, I don't chase ambulances around or anything,
Okay, so I mean, based on, I've read the lawsuit that's been filed in Montgomery County, the 35-page lawsuit, and the points that are brought up there. And there's some very nuanced areas that are very similar to this, where my understanding Beltline's MO is we're going to go into an area, build these data centers, and then create a buffer zone around them and talk other landowners into selling their property, or if they don't sell it, saying, well, we have a vested interest in creating this buffer zone. We'll take it via eminent domain. So it's not just the footprint of the data center or park, it's a buffer zone outside of that area. And landowners in other states have said, that's an anticipatory nuisance. Even though this is not built, I have the reasonable expectation that this is going to adversely affect my property value, my quality of life, the air, the water, everything else. And they have brought suits in other states, and with probably a pretty good probability of winning that suit. Is that something that, in your legal professional opinion, something here that would be actionable?
That's a tool that's in the toolbox.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, appreciate it.
Hi, I have a question as well. A couple of days ago, I saw Segra.com that was putting some fiber optics outside of a neighborhood street, and I called them up, and they said that they're actually doing it for a local business. So it's probably, they haven't called me back, but a local business, because they don't do residential, I'm thinking it's probably the data center that's coming in, because it's a street that's near the data center. So another approach to bring up too is are there any laws or
any way that we can look into getting Beltline and the property owners, either in, the one in Diamond Farms or Crooked Creek, for maybe doing things beforehand, before even letting the community know about the data center, making preparations, getting permits, preparations and things like that. I mean, are they allowed to do that before even notifying the public or notifying neighbors?
Yeah, a property owner can always get a land disturbance permit from DNR and, do certain land clearing activities on their property. There's nothing illegal about that.
Okay, and you said that it has to be 15-day notification before, what was the 15-day notification again? To notify neighbors or property owners?
The 15-day ordinance dealt with if the Board of Aldermen want to adopt or amend a municipal ordinance.
Okay. Because also, too, someone told me a story where he wanted to put a restaurant near the river on his property, but he had to ask permission of the neighbors around. Is there anything like that where if something is going to be a huge nuisance or an impact on the environment, in regards, are there any laws where the neighbors have to be notified or asked permission?
I'm not aware of any legal requirement that you have to get permission of your neighbors to do something.
Okay. And then I also wanted to just let everybody know, I hope everybody knows that we don't need these data centers at all. Okay, it's for surveillance. It's for control of the people. Okay, so I just want everybody to know that. And then also I've been reading too in other communities where there's Amazon data centers that there are toxins in the water that they discharge. And it's too late. It's after the fact. So if we look at those communities and find out what kind of toxins are going in the water with the discharge.
Those are issues that could be addressed
beforehand. We can address that
in accordance with the ordinance. The Board of Aldermen or the Planning and Zoning Commission could require the developer to look into that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
My question is about flooding. Are those models included in what you were talking about earlier?
My microphone. Here it is. You could insert a moment in time where there's a surface flood. I guess that's what you're talking about. That happens so commonly here in Pacific. Right. Yeah, you could insert those things and see what it does. The answer to the question, in short, is yes. You can add and subtract to these models just about anything you can think of if it has to do with surface or subsurface hydraulics.
So just an observation. My husband's family's been here for over 100 years, and we've noticed in our lifetime that the flooding in Pacific is different than it was 40 years ago, even 20 years ago. We just made an observation that Robertsville, what has saved Pacific from a lot of downtown flooding are the railroad tracks. And that water's coming up in Robertsville higher than it used to. If it's going to jump the tracks in Robertsville, it may be likely that it'll just follow the tracks down into Pacific. So I would hope that a flood study is done to that effect to make sure that if this does go in, that, they're aware.
Well, I do know that, if this thing falls on certain properties that may be prone to flood, and I don't know if it's a 100-year flood plain or what, but you do need to understand what the impact of building on a property is, what's the impact downstream. If we build a levee, let's say, for instance, it's low enough where the developer might want to build a levee system around the entire facility, what that does is it prevents flooding there, but it pushes the onus downstream.
Which on that property, where it comes down to the river, you can see it from Highway O. It's below those homes. The water's already there.
Each flooding event is its own unique set of circumstances, and so, but generally speaking, if indeed that particular property, I haven't looked at it from that perspective, but that would be something that, again, any regulatory agency or governmental board that would be a stakeholder in making this process be approved, that's a legitimate question to ask, and it's a legitimate legitimate need for effort to understand that question. What would that do, if anything? I don't know.
Secondly, on the electricity part, reading that Ameren, what the utilities do is they say at your startup year one, we'll give you this much power, and then they ramp their power up year after year to get them to their full capacity. There has been instances where the companies, they're in a race to get these built, and what they will do is turn on their generators and run them 24/7 to create enough power to run what they need. They won't wait for the utility companies. Just pointing out that unless that's covered in the PUD or somewhere, that would be an option for them. And last is a question about a traffic study, which was in the Pacific policy that you went through. Traffic going out Highway O, there's a lot of us that live out there now, and it's a steady stream of traffic. There's going to be many generators that are going to require diesel fuel trucks that are going to be fully loaded going through town. Also reading that the GPUs, their processors are very heavy and dense, and it's not the capacity of a semi-truck, it's the weight limit that they can load up 10 to 12 of these servers, and they're at full weight. So we're going to have trucks during construction going in and out, after it's operational going out, fully weighted trucks on a 2-lane road. And I'm glad my kids don't live here anymore, because people are not going to be patient. They're going to try and pass those trucks, and we're just going to have the risk of our kids and us getting involved in more accidents. And I think I got to drive past that. You know, my route's going to be Bend Bridge going through Catawissa, so I'm probably not going to be the only person that's going to start using different traffic patterns to get to home and back.
You know, if I may say one thing, so we had 2 technical experts up here tonight presenting. My expertise is in groundwater, aquifers, et cetera, and Natalie's is in wastewater treatment. And those are just 2 little boxes that have to be understood for people making these decisions. Is this a good decision or not? You just brought up a couple of more, flooding. That's a whole new expert. Traffic studies is a whole new expert, and it goes on and on and on. There are many boxes that need to be checked. We presented on 2 of them tonight, just 2 of them.
All right, this is a bit of a tangent, but I'm wondering if we are watching or need to be watching what's going on in Jeff City, because like that good bill that she was trying to get passed to kind of regulate AI. HB 2384 has passed the House and is going to the Senate, and they are labeling it as something that will help with the housing shortage. But the summary reads like this. It limits the authority of counties and municipalities to impose building regulations that exceed state permitted energy efficiencies. So could that be like read in such a way that the state could say, hey, we think you need a data center, and we would not even have a say? Or am I reading too much into that?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I'm not familiar with that bill, so I'd rather tell you nothing than tell you something wrong, if that's okay.
Yeah. And that just might be something that we start thinking about, because it would really be awful to do all this work and then have the state come in and say, guess what? Because I don't trust them not to do that. So we might want to.
But it is an interesting point because, again, based on my experience dealing with the legislature, they are all in favor of what's called local control over whatever the issue is, up until the point that they're not in favor of it.
Exactly. Even,
for example, large concentrated animal feeding operations. 20 counties in Missouri used to have health ordinances regulating those, but that authority was stripped away in 2021. So
this is HB 2384, and we can look it up. I haven't read the whole bill because I have a full-time job too, but it makes me nervous and curious. So.
Attorney Jeffrey, I'm Nancy Watson, and our property is right next to the proposed data center. My question is this. In the PUD filed by Bill McLaren, it talks about rezoning, and I believe you said earlier that annexation has to come before rezoning, as Bill's property is right now not in the city of Pacific, but it is in rural Pacific, Franklin County. So is that what you meant? That even though the PUD is going to be discussed on the 25th, also Henry Alt's PUD, does annexation have to take place before rezoning?
yes.
And how's that going to look?
I'm not familiar with the applications or any applications been submitted for annexation. So again, like my answer to the woman before, I'd rather tell you nothing now than tell you something incorrect.
Right. I've not seen anything about applications on annexation, but I just wondered if that was correct. Your understanding is
Yeah, sure. A city can only do zoning over a footprint of property that they have jurisdiction over. So a piece of property that's outside the city limits, they can't zone it if they wanted to.
Okay.
So they have to annex it first.
Okay. That I really wanted that answer. A lot of people want that answer. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm sorry I'm up here the second time. I forgot it, my second question. I'm getting old too. Anyhow, the conceptual drawings that were presented on January 27th, yeah. So there were a lot of versions of that out there, and they're very blurry and things like that, but I was able to get a hold of one that was actually sort of legible. It would be nice to have something that the developers actually had. I know that's not blurry for them, but there were two things that I observed on there. And the first thing is the observation. You have the wastewater, two different lines, and then down on O is a 5,000 linear foot connection to the Water District 3. Who's paying for that? But it just so happens on April 26th, I think, there are two bonds that are all the way down to the bottom of the current elections. There's, I think, a $5 million bond and a $20 million bond for improvements. Somebody needs to figure out if we're going to be paying for this 5,000 foot extension to the Water District 3. That should be, somebody needs to answer it. Okay, sorry. I didn't plan on. But there's other things, a legal question. In this conceptual drawing, there are two cemeteries, and it shows a 50-foot setback from them. There are roads that lead up there. And but in the Diamond Farms, this is the legal thing, in the Diamond Farms, they have a deeded cemetery, and that one is the Tyler Cemetery, but actually the Reed Sorry. I have pictures of the headstones there. It's the Reed family. They intermarried with the Tyler family. They're pioneer families. But Mr. Elkocamp or somebody actually deeded it to the county, like they're supposed to, so that can be preserved. But the two cemeteries that are on McLaurin's land are not deeded. They are not deeded. On the plot maps, they are not there. They're on the conceptual drawings, but they're not deeded. So these undeeded cemeteries, not only do they not show up and find a grave or any national registries, we have no pictures of them. We don't have the GPS coordinates. Now that will show it up when in the deeded, because if you look on ArcGIS on the Diamond Farms, the GPS coordinates are there, but there are no pictures, unfortunately, because Diamond Farms won't let anybody go there. I'm not sure about that. But the thing is that legally, from what I understand, that if it's undeeded, these cemeteries, and it's sold to the developers, they have no obligations to not desecrate these cemeteries or change it or cut down I believe they have trees growing within the cemeteries. And from what I understand, there are a lot of headstones, 50, 75 of them in there. That doesn't even include the slave or servant unmarked graves that nobody knows about because they're there. So what keeps them from cutting down the trees and desecrating the graves if it's undeeded?
A provision in the PUD could do that. I also know there are Missouri statutes that deal with cemeteries. I'm not familiar with those, so what restrictions, if any, are imposed by law? I hate to say this, but I'd rather tell you nothing than tell you something incorrect.
But from what I understand is that the landowner has to deed it to the county, but it doesn't give the county control over it, except it is designated now. It's a cemetery. But anyhow, Mr. McLaurin needs to do that because I don't understand why he hadn't. Mr. Elkocamp went through the trouble of doing it. Anyhow.
I don't want to hold long, but last time I waited till last to talk. And after that, I went and talked to a family member who is a computer engineer, actually designed and oversaw the construction of a building like this up towards the airport in St. Louis. And I said, do we want one of those in Pacific? He says, no, you do not. You absolutely do not. You don't need one. What's the benefits? We saw the slide, pretty buildings. These things are massive. He built a small one, only 2,000 square feet, twice as tall as this. The ones we're talking about are enormous. They're bigger than any Sam's Club you go into. That's going to dwarf the city of Pacific. I asked him, so how many jobs, when you installed it, we were told hundreds of construction jobs. It was all done by an out-of-state contractor that installs these things across the United States. Not a single job is here. Well, surely we were told there's 100 people that work inside these buildings on a daily basis. How many do you have working in your building? 2. Everything else is done out of state on a computer. So no jobs on that. What kind of revenue? They get abatements for everything, and they run up bills because as soon as they get in there, they need you to improve your water system. They need you to upgrade your sewer system. They need you to bring in more power. That all falls on the city. That's our money. So we don't want to even go down that road. I hope there's enough board members here and city government, because that's really where the battle is. The power of getting this thing not to happen is to not let it happen. But it starts with our city government first. Once it happens, it's very difficult to keep it on the track because there's no tracks. The presentation they made, very, very vague and very misleading. I mean, I asked about, there was discussion about water output. Well, it's going to need 2 million gallons, but that's what your sewer system's putting out right now. Your water system, it goes right back in, and when it comes out of his system, it's toxic. It's highly concentrated in forever chemicals, phosphates, acids, that I'll bet our filter system is not going to control. So everything that they told us is very vague, not specific. And I know I asked, well, what? We can make it as quiet as you want it, whatever you guys want. That's crazy. He's got to wear ear protection when he goes in the building. He's got to wear a respirator when he goes inside the building. Okay, so it's a whole lot of bad stuff. We just need our city government to get behind it and always keep us in the loop. They should all be here. And even though we can't do it in City Hall because it won't hold us, we need to have it like a city meeting. So that's all I have. Appreciate it.
And I just want to tap on to what he just said. Beltline is just the salesman for this. The nomenclature that the gentleman from Beltline, I can't remember his name, the Ryan's, that he was like wording things is not correct. He kept saying the gray water. We're using the gray water. No, they're not. Gray water, if anyone has a camper in here, you know that gray water comes from your sinks and your dishwashers, not your toilets. Effluent from your wastewater facility is not gray water. So right there, that told me that this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. That's just what I'm going with.
All right, we're going to have one last question here, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Okay, I thought of one thing else. I mean, this is 16 massive buildings. I just wonder just how many additional buildings are going to be required to store their fuel, their batteries. I mean, we need to know how many other buildings are they going to have that's connected to this 16 building mega hyper center. Does anybody know? Don't know. Okay.
Don't know.
All right.
All right, I'd like to thank everybody for your questions and for engaging respectfully. With that, I'd like to close by reflecting on what tonight was made clear. And before I do that, I do want to make everyone aware that this event was hosted by Pacific Route Coalition, which is an organization that Allison and I founded a few weeks ago in order to provide more clarity to the citizens of Pacific and the surrounding areas. So this is not a City of Pacific hosted event. This was hosted by donations. That's how we have afforded to pay for our lawyer and our experts here tonight. So all of your donations that you've made to our GoFundMe, through purchasing our merch that you see certain individuals wearing, all of that has gone to fund this privately, not through government-funded taxpayer dollars. So I wanted to make that clear. Give it up for them. Thank you. Thank you. We also wanted to thank the Senior Center, wanted to thank everybody, and we would like to thank the Senior Center for allowing us to use their facility, and they wanted to thank everybody for remaining respectful. We also wanted to thank Pacific Police Department and Chief Klingler for providing protection services for us tonight. Tonight, you did not hear speculation. You heard that aquifer capacity can be tested and modeled. You heard that total water demand now and in the future can be measured. You heard that wastewater capacity requires real engineering review. You heard that zoning procedure must follow Missouri law. You saw that the current PUD does not clearly limit future groundwater use, guarantee tax terms, or define enforcement if such goes wrong. That is not emotional. It is practical, it is measurable, and it is answerable. If independent experts are not yet comfortable saying with certainty that the science and infrastructure fully support this project as written, then it is reasonable to pause before granting zoning approval. These experts work in facts and risk every day. If they need clearer numbers and defined limits before drawing conclusions, it only makes sense that elected officials would want the same clarity before making long-term decisions for the city. This is not about stopping development. This is about getting the answers first, science first, documentation first. Approval comes last. Once zoning is granted, leverage shifts, and once a PUD is adopted, it becomes controlling. Decisions of this scale should be made with confidence, not assumptions. Thank you to our experts for sharing their professional insight, and to this community for coming together in a thoughtful and engaging way, and to the aldermen who are here tonight for being willing to listen and hear all sides before making a decision of this magnitude. To our community, this does not end here. Stay engaged. Continue reaching out to the Board of Aldermen and to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Ask questions, seek clarity, participate in the process. We all know next week, Planning and Zoning Commission is having a meeting at Pacific High School in the auditorium that will be live streamed. You can join the live stream or you can go to the high school. I encourage you to show up, make your voices heard, ask the questions that you've asked tonight. If you asked a question tonight and one of our experts was not able to answer it, ask it again next week. That is your opportunity to get engaged. And most importantly, continue supporting one another. We are neighbors first. Whatever the outcome, we will still be a community tomorrow. Thank you, guys. Anyone left in the room, if you are readily able to help fold down the white chairs, that would be greatly appreciated. We're putting them at this door in the front, so if you could help, we would greatly appreciate that. Thank you.